Senators Alquist. Here. Alquist here. De Leon. De Leon here. Fuller. Here. Fuller here. Harman. Here. Harman here. Steinberg. Steinberg here.
Here. Yes, thank you very much. We've got file items. Well, let's take file item 3 first, the highlight of the day. Let me ask and welcome Karen Ross, who has been appointed by the governor to be the Secretary of the Department of Food and Agriculture, to please come on forward. And we welcome you. And we set this confirmation hearing especially because today is California Ag Day.
Very good. Very good.
And of course, you know, this is a festival that promotes farmers and ranchers and our agricultural industry, and that there's great things going on outside the Capitol.
Kind of wet.
Yeah, some of us, never get outside the Capitol, but I hear it's a good, there's a lot of fun, and that's terrific. We want to welcome you, invite you to introduce any member of your family or special guest who is here with you today. If you can make a brief opening statement, and then we will ask you several questions, all right?
Thank you.
Welcome to you.
Thanks. My husband, Barry, is still in Alexandria, Virginia, so if you know anyone who's looking for a home in Old Town, I can help.
Very good.
I have many friends in the audience today. Thank you. My name is Karen Ross, and I have to tell you how honored and humbled I am to be a farm kid from western Nebraska and to move to my chosen state of California, the #1 ag state, and be asked to be the Secretary of Food and Agriculture. Agricultural policy and advocacy have been a passion of my 30-year career. It was something that always bewildered my dad because, quite frankly, if you couldn't touch it, plant it, water it, and harvest it, he just couldn't figure out what the heck that I've been doing all this time. I was raised in a family that's truly dedicated to service, to giving back, to being a good neighbor, and to helping the community. And so I look forward and feel very fortunate that Governor Brown has given me this opportunity for public service, and I hope to give back to the people of California by leading a Department of Food and Agriculture that is responsive to all of our stakeholders, transparent, collaborative, innovative, and efficient. And I believe all that is possible because of the truly dedicated and committed people who staff the Department of Food and Agriculture. They are the best example of public service. I touched on a number of my priorities in the letter that I sent to the committee. I'll just quickly touch on a couple of those. One is our commitment to maintaining the comprehensive surveillance and rapid response system that ensures food safety for all of our citizens and to protecting our state from invasive species and animal diseases. It's a very sophisticated system. It's one that we hope we don't have to activate very often, but the ability to do early detection and then rapidly respond is truly what keeps the citizens of the state safe, but it's also very much about protecting markets here and around the world and opening new markets. We know that California agriculture is a huge generator of revenues for the state. At the farm gate alone, it's over $30 billion a year. One of the things that the farm community has expressed concern about over the years are the layers of regulation, and I truly think that with the scientific and technical expertise of the Department of Food and Agriculture, we can be of assistance to that so that they can continue to grow the economy and create new jobs. California agriculture is incredibly diverse. It's plants and animals, it's big farms and small farms, it's organic growers and growers who use the most advanced biotech and technology that's available. It's about farmers who sell only 50 miles from home and farmers who sell to countries around the world. It's 350 plus commodities. They're all healthy and they're all in demand. Those are the good things. I want to make sure that every one of those people, whether they're urban farmers or farming in the middle of nowhere, whether there are farm workers who work so hard in the fields or the farmers who own the farms, I want to make sure that all of our farm community and all of our stakeholders know that CDFA serves them and they have confidence that they can come to us for assistance. I'm going to leave it at that, but I hope that you know that I am very pleased to be here today and anxious to answer all of your questions. And I truly want to thank Governor Brown for giving me this opportunity.
Very good. Are there questions from members of the committee? Let's maybe go around the horn the opposite way this time. Senator De Leon? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Good afternoon, Ms. Ross, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I have a couple subject matters that I want to bring up. I am a Democrat, obviously from an urban area in Los Angeles, the largest city in California and the second largest in the Union. But we have concerns, obviously, with what happens with agriculture, because obviously we have a very large consumer base. Without the consumer base, there simply is no agricultural business in the Central Valley, or elsewhere. In the past few years, we've had Vector that has been trapped actually in my former Assembly District number 45. Now I'm in Senate District 22 in the community of Echo Park, where I used to live. And it's the Asian citrus psyllid, which has devastated the citrus industry in Brazil, in parts of Mexico, has been found to be in parts of northern San Diego County. It's making its way up north, up to California. Obviously, we know it's devastated the citrus industry in the state of Florida. And for a lot of folks who don't know, because they have done such an exceptional job with regards to public relations in the state of Florida, the oranges in the citrus industry from the state of Florida is actually just used for juice. The table fruit that folks, and especially children, peel and eat, that comes from California. And that's why our citrus industry, as well as our seedless citrus industry, is very critical to California's economy. Because we capture that vector, the Asian citrus psyllid in Echo Park, in parts of my district, and obviously we don't want it to make its way up north and devastate these citrus crops. Obviously, it causes the disease Huanglongbling, that once it penetrates the trees, it destroys these trees. Share a couple of thoughts with regards to the citrus industry and this vector.
Well, the citrus industry is important to the state economically, but also historically. When you think about those early days, it was using the oranges to attract people to come to California, and the symbol of healthy products that we grow here. So citrus is very important. It's an important product that goes into export markets. So it's obvious that we need it, and the people who work in the fields and the farmers are obviously very, very concerned about this for the very reason that you mentioned. The pest itself would just be a pest, except that it vectors a disease that kills the plant. It would be like shutting down the factory if it were to happen. And so it's very, very important that we do a couple things. One is that we stop the spread of the insect. And that's what we're focused on right now, is keeping the insect where it is, because we have found significant populations, to stop it from spreading into the significant growing areas of the state, which would be primarily in the Central Valley, but also along the coast. That is the role of the partnership that CDFA has with the federal government through the United States Department of Food and Agriculture, as well as working very closely with our ag commissioners. It's a partnership. It's very collaborative. It all has to work really well together. But that partnership also includes the citrus industry itself. As you know, because you authored the bill, the citrus industry immediately passed legislation to do a self-assessment, to raise the funding, to do the research to find a solution to this disease. So the role of government at this point is to knock down the populations of the pest, keep the pest from spreading, and we're doing a good job of that. We're doing that primarily by focusing on residential properties. And the reason we're doing that is about 60% of the residents in Southern California have at least one citrus tree in their backyard. So we're using the public funds to go about and do those kinds of treatments there as a way to stop the spread of the disease. The farmers are monitoring their fields, and they're treating their fields if they have the pest. And then they're also funding a very aggressive research program that we hope over an appropriate amount of time will find a cure for the disease itself, so we don't have to be so worried about the insect vectoring the disease into the orchards. It's a program that I use the analogy of what we've done so far very successfully to the glassy-winged sharpshooter and Pierce's disease. Okay. Similar situation where the pest itself vectors a disease that kills the plant. So you really want to keep the pest away from the plants so that they can't vector that disease. So I feel very confident we're in a good place with this program. It's been in place for a couple of years. It's a great partnership. There's funding at the federal level. Unfortunately, because of our situation right now, we do not have any CDFA state dollars in the program, and there is concern that if we don't show some commitment through general fund support, will the feds remove their money? I don't think that's the case for the short term, at least, and I want to work with the industry to be a strong advocate for finding dollars so that they will understand how important it is to the state of California and to the industry itself.
I want to thank you for your comments, because one is when you're dealing with the self-assessment, especially from these group of folks who I know, I mean, the self-assessment is a tall order, and they actually did it, which shows you the severity of the situation. Any matching dollars, obviously, from the feds or whatever the formula may be, 1-to-1, obviously that's in jeopardy, and that's a little difficult given the budget circumstances. Any general fund not even augmentation, but rather just survivability in terms of any dollars we have left in the program to deal with this vector. So the relationship you have, obviously, with the USDA and with the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, I would ask that you use it to its fullest, obviously, given the very close relationship that you do have, because it is a very important issue here in California, given that we have already witnessed what's happened in Brazil, in parts of Mexico, and we've witnessed what's happened with the citrus industry in the state of Florida. So we don't want that to happen to the most sophisticated and largest agribusiness in the entire world, not just the nation. So I appreciate your comments. I got one more issue that is important to me for Los Angeles. Downtown Los Angeles is the nation's largest flower market. There is no flower market of its kind, nor in Seattle, nor in San Francisco, or Manhattan. We have the largest flower market in the entire nation. That being the flower cut industry is very, very critical. Now, I know there's some geopolitics on the issue, for example, of roses. You know, I quite find it somewhat ironic, if you will, that when, January 1st rolls around and many families in the United States turn on their television set and they watch the New Year's rose parade, that about 90 to 95% of all the flowers, and specifically roses, that are on those floats are actually not from the United States, but rather they're from Colombia or they're from Ecuador. Our market share was roughly around 30 to 35% at one time. I'm not sure if that's in the aggregate or disaggregate when it comes to roses. I don't recall exactly, but I spent some time, obviously, in Santa Barbara when I went to school and when I was an organizer there. And we have Carpinteria, a large nursery industry base there, a lot of flowers there. So because of geopolitics and something similar to what they did in Afghanistan to try to uproot the sale of poppies, or the fabrication or the seedlings of poppies that creates heroin. Obviously, with the trade agreements with Colombia and Ecuador, they've got a lot of farmers, instead of selling, or I should say not selling, but cultivating cocoa leaves. They got them, doing roses, and that has had a detrimental effect, obviously, on our national flower cut industry here. Talk to me about this a little, because I do know, speaking with the flower cut industry folks, they sort of feel like they're between a rock and a hard place, and that they know when it comes to the treaties that we have, specifically with Ecuador and Colombia, and I shared this with you last week, that they send either the president of Colombia or Ecuador or the vice president, or at the very least, they send in their trade representative, as well as the ambassador, Colombian Ecuador ambassador. That's a tall order for the cut flower industry here. So share some thoughts with that.
One of the challenges for many of California's crops is that we're so diverse. We have over 350 commodities, but some of them are actually very, very small in the scheme of when a U.S. trade ambassador is negotiating a deal. So it's very important wherever we can, as the state of California, to also weigh in to show what the impact is to all of our specialty crops, and certainly the cut flower industry would be one of those. You've already noted that there are oftentimes geopolitical reasons for how things turn out the way they do, but I view my job on behalf of agriculture in the state of California is to make sure that I'm gathering data about what the impacts would be from the various commodity groups and presenting that as a package to both the USDA Secretary, because they're very involved in the discussions around these kinds of treaties, as well as to USTR, and specifically to the Ag Ambassador, who happens to be someone who's very familiar with California. Izzy Siddiqui, Dr. Izzy Siddiqui is the Ag Ambassador. So I really look forward to being able to maximize the opportunities I've had to work with those people in the past so they know who I am, that I'm putting together scientifically sound data to present to them, and do the best that we can to advocate for why certain decisions that they be making in the macro can have these kinds of unintended consequences. There's a whole menu of reasons why the flower industry has gone offshore, but certainly we want to make sure that they don't have any other reasons to go more than they already have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ross, for your answers. And I'm sure the pro tem never would have fathomed the very thought that my district is as diverse with the agricultural
I never would have
interest.
thought, but that's the beauty of this job. You learn something new every day. Senator Alquist, I will go around the horn, but I know Senator Alquist has to get across the hall quickly, so upstairs. So if that's all right, we'd ask her to go next.
It was a pleasure talking with you when you came to the office. What I did not mention then is that in looking at my Ellis Island family records, that of my Greek ancestors, the ones who stayed in Greece were the sea captains and monks, but 90% of the ones who came over were farmers and laborers, and so it was a real pleasure to discover that. As I mentioned in the office, California has a $37 billion industry, yet access to fresh fruits and vegetables is not universal. In fact, I have carried legislation unsuccessfully in the past on having grants and refrigerable units in mom-and-pop type operations so that people had closer to them access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So that leads me into my first question, and only two. What can be done to increase the growth of certified farmers markets in low-income communities?
Well, that's something I have a real passion for, and I look forward to working with the agricultural producers, as well as, in many instances, it will be a partnership with Secretary Dooley, for example, because many of the programs that would directly impact some of the things that you care about are at HHS, but that's where the governor has really encouraged us to collaborate across the cabinet, and I look forward to working with her. I have a couple of examples. One is that a few years ago, the state of California was going to stop administering its portion of senior farmers markets coupons for a number of administrative reasons, and it was a fairly small program. At that time, we had an established federal grants administration unit because of the specialty block grant program that was created under the last Farm Bill. So the Department of Food and Agriculture stepped up and said, we will manage that program for you. So we've been able to keep that program going and grow it just a little bit as there have been additional dollars available for that program. We've been able to do that. So it's about $800,000 worth of coupons specifically for seniors to be used at seniors farmers markets, and it's a very popular program. There's a broad coalition of people in this state who are very interested in the long-term viability of agriculture, and especially how we can broaden access to the bounty that we have here in California. And I want to work with those folks in AgVision to do that. And the growth of farmers markets is something I'm personally interested in and very excited about. I want to make sure that every farmer, regardless of what they farm or the size of their farm is, they have real opportunities for markets. And one of the most exciting and robust ones right now is anything that's directly to the consumer. So being able to expand the numbers of farmers markets and maintain the integrity of that farmer market system is something I'm interested in doing. We have over 600 markets now, and that's been about a 25% growth over the last couple of years. As well as community-supported agriculture, your box of produce that you get when you are supporting a particular family is another opportunity to, I think, bring that kind of product closer to the consumer. And then finally, working with USDA on identifying food deserts where there's not access to healthy products because of the makeup of the neighborhood, and it can be in a rural community as well as in the middle of an urban sector, and really look at how do we strategically identify where the food deserts are and where we can get the best bang for the buck with any type of federal assistance that's available or anything that might come up here in the state to be able to address those kinds of situations.
Thank you. My second last question on a very different topic is the feedlot biomass, which is simply a term for cattle, hog, or poultry manure, can be put to practical use as a renewable energy source. California, as we know, is the home of high-tech innovation, and California is taking the lead on renewable energy. Turning feedlot biomass into a viable energy source seems to fit nicely with what California does best, and it also would provide dairy farmers a new source of revenue and help cut down on manure disposal costs. How can you, as Secretary, work with other state agencies and dairy farmers throughout the state to make California the leader in feedlot biomass energy?
Yes, this is something that really goes to the heart of some of the concern that the farm community has about the regulatory burden, because sometimes there's contradictions between one arm of government and another. And the topic of methane digesters is something that people are working on now. I believe that as Secretary and with the scientific and technical expertise of the department, we can bring some additional data to the table to perhaps work out some of those differences. Right now, it's really a conflict between some of our water quality regs and some of our air quality regs that have really kind of frozen more development of methane digesters. But I'm very optimistic because there's so much interest in this, and that if we can prove a net environmental benefit, that perhaps we can get some pilot projects going to test out some of this without harming the environment in any way, and then be able to prove a new technology, which would be very exciting for the state of California.
Well, as the granddaughter of a farmer, it turns out, I would be happy to look at
Great.
work
We'll
on this
stay
issue.
in touch on that.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Fuller?
Hi.
Hey. We've already spent breakfast together and press
Did you eat your
conference
steak?
together. Oh.
I got there too late for my steak.
Oh, well, you missed it. I always get to the table for steak. I would just like to echo some of the concerns about the Asian citrus silage, and we had a great talk, and I think you've answered this question, so I'm glad to see that you're aggressively planning a campaign around that. So I'd like to move to the topic of what kind of support can the department provide the fair boards during their transition from the general fund?
Yes, this is an important one because as we saw over the last few weeks of the budget, there's tremendous support at the community level for the fairs. While the $32 million in general fund support will no longer be there, there will still be certain mandates and oversight requirements on the department's part to provide that level of support as far as compliance and maintaining good governance policies for their fair boards. We also have people within our Fairs and Expositions division who are real experts in fairs and can provide some sort of consulting of how can we be more entrepreneurial with the fairs, how can we look at creating perhaps new entities that would allow them to be able to do some things that they can't now as a state entity. And it's going to be very important that we maintain our oversight and engagement with the fairs because, as we know, the fair properties themselves are an important element of our emergency response, whether it's floods or fires, whether it's hosting people at our sites or bringing their animals out of their barns to be safe. It's an important thing that we have to keep in mind and make sure that those buildings and facilities are maintained so that they continue to be useful for us in that way. So we will have limited amount of funding available to do that kind of oversight. I know that the industry itself is looking at many other alternatives. We want to support them, work with them, and help them when their local community wants to come out with some new innovative ideas. To the best that we can, I want to be able to support that, and we have the experts to be able to do that, I think. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Senator Harman.
Thank you very much, and congratulations,
Thank you,
Secretary
Senator
Ross, on your appointment. My background is not terribly different from what your background is. I grew up in Kansas. I went to Kansas State University, oftentimes called Silo Tech. And my brother married a young woman in college whose parents are dry land wheat farmers in western Kansas, similar to what your younger
Yes.
brother is doing. I don't know if he's here today or not, but so there is a little bit of back commonality there. And to tell you the truth, when I walked into this hearing room this afternoon, I was fully prepared to support your appointment until I found
The
out that
Nebraska
you
part.
are a Cornhusker at the University of Nebraska.
You know it's in the DNA. We don't have a choice.
This is going to cause me some real problems.
I was thinking school rivals when you were talking.
I went to This is an interesting story, Barry. I went to K-State for 4 years and I attended every single home football game, and we lost them all. So that's
What can I say?
it's kind of a record. On a more professional and serious note, I wanted to ask you about the numerous boards and commissions that are underneath the jurisdiction of the department. I know many of them are driven for marketing purposes. Many of them are supported by fees that the industry supports. I think you mentioned one about the citrus industry a few moments ago. Have you given any consideration to thinking about trying to consolidate some of these many boards and commissions that we have? And then, as sort of a follow-up question, are you working with the agricultural industry with regard to what oftentimes are perceived as redundant regulations? So it's kind of a two-part question.
First of all, on the boards and commissions, each one of those, farmers, I love farmers because they're so independent, and each one of those, when they decide to do an assessment, it's for a very specific reason and a very specific commodity. And so they are set up. Most of them have every 5 years a review process. Normally they go out for referendum to make sure that the farmer feels that their assessment is bringing them the services and the value that they expected when they put those dollars in. So without a vote of the industry to be able to consolidate those boards, we really can't. They all are run under the Marketing Act of 1937, which sounds like it's old and archaic, but in fact, it's probably more relevant today than ever, because when you're competing in a global market, these kinds of tools to be able to join together to do programs cooperatively are actually even more valuable than they probably were then. But as to the efficiencies, because they are run like independent businesses, these boards and commissions oftentimes are outside of the department. They are run by an independent board with oversight from the Department of Food and Agriculture. We have 5 economists that divide up the numbers of boards and commissions, so each one of them has about 10 of them in their portfolio. So we're providing the oversight to make sure that they're abiding by open meeting laws, that their financial house is in order, that the audits are being done, that they're complying with good governance and good business practices. Many of the boards will contract with an entity that may provide administrative services to multiple boards, and most of them do. We have one management company in the Valley, for example, that manages 10 independent boards and provides accounting services to 2 others, and that's an efficiency that they found. We have the Apple Commission, which is a fairly large commission. Their CEO is also the CEO of the Blueberry Commission, which is new and smaller, and so that's an efficiency that they've been able to achieve there. So I feel that they really are efficient, and that the fact that they are up for a vote and a review every 5 years maintains that kind of efficiency. Okay. And I feel good about the oversight that we provide. There are some decisions that are made at the board level that will come to the Secretary's office that we'll reject because we don't think it's a good policy, and we still have a say in being able to do that. With regard to redundancies in
regulatory
yes.
areas.
One of the things that I have done in my first month on the job is create an internal regulatory work group. It's being headed by our acting general counsel, where we are bringing together the people within our many programs who are monitoring regulations that may be at any department here or at the federal level. So we have one master calendar to be able to see what's in the pipeline, where it is in the process, and what the deadlines are. And then I think it's very important for us to communicate with the industry itself. Here again, if I can bring good scientific data to the table for another regulatory agency to help them with their decision-making process, I'm happy to do that, but it has to be scientifically credible. If we can do impact assessment that's helpful to that decision-making, I want to be able to do that. And I'm especially interested in alternative strategies for mitigation whenever that's appropriate. So I think there are things that we can do, but it's going to require collaboration
Good.
with the industry, within my department, and then across the cabinet.
Good. I'd encourage you to go down that road.
I look forward to doing it.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it'll be a challenge. Senator.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ross. Appreciate your being here, your willingness to continue in public service, and your candor here today. You know, people who don't know about the Department of Food and Agriculture might think that you're dealing with commissions to promote the industry, and that is part of it. But the thing that I want to focus your attention on here a little bit is about what you talked about with regard to outbreaks and pest issues, which is a public health issue.
Yes.
It can be a public safety issue, and you know, you talked a little bit about the Asian citrus. How do you pronounce it? Facilid. There's, of course, the light brown apple moth, foot and mouth disease, not just exclusive to members of the legislature.
Yes,
It's
sir.
a real it's a real issue, and we try to keep it light, but I actually have a very serious question, which is your department has taken some significant general fund budget reductions. The governor has proposed a $47 million general fund reduction for fiscal year 11-12 and $15 million for fiscal year 12-13. And that presumes, of course, that we are successful in gaining the revenue to fill the remainder of the budget gap. So my direct question to you is, if we aren't successful and have to move to an all-cuts approach, how does that affect your ability and your department's ability to combat these public health and public safety pests that are central to the health of agriculture here in California?
Well, that would be the reason I'd want to go back to Washington, D.C. and stay. It's a very,
Get it.
it's very serious, and we have talked at the department that we have to be prepared for a Plan B and a Plan C, and what is the worst case scenario. And I can tell you right now, honestly, I don't have the answer to that question, because we are to the point where during this particular round of budget cuts, we work very closely with the consortium as asked by the governor to do so. We sat down with the industry and went through all of our programs line by line. How does the program work? What's a priority? What's a value? Why are we doing things the ways that we're doing that? And so we got a lot of input to prioritize where we did take the cuts. And some of them are scary. We're taking $2 million out of border protection.
In the first round?
In the first round, yes.
Okay.
That's a scary thing. We've eliminated programs. We had to eliminate weeds. I had to look at our core weed program. We help fight weeds. But I had to prioritize. There are pests that can absolutely keep us out of markets, which have huge economic harm. And there are diseases to animals that spread very, very rapidly and present health implications for our public. So we stayed focused on maintaining general fund for those very kinds of programs. We are to the point where we don't have a lot of discretion except to start to dramatically reduce those programs. Now, in the meantime, hoping that we don't have to go to 100% cut general fund, we've had the industry step up, and for those programs that have real value, they are increasing fees that they're already paying for certain things like phytosanitary certificates. We are having discussions about inspection program services that are so valuable to the industry. Yes, they're food safety, but the best food safety program is also a market protection program. Are there some other opportunities for assessments in that regard? But in the meantime, I have pledged to the industry, and we are getting ready to launch a very ambitious process improvement initiative where we can look at all of our systems that have been constructed over decades to see where there's overlaps, where there's duplications, and how we can be as efficient as possible. But I'm not sure that we can be efficient all the way to no general fund support.
I understand. So that's what I want to explore a little bit more, because I have no doubt, and you're very responsive to Senator Harman's question about redundancy. I have no doubt that you and the industry will do their very best to create efficiencies and and attempt to operate with the resource constraints. But I understand you may not have a specific scenario B, C, and D. But in this corner of the world that you're now in control of and you lead, if we were to cut another $47 million, just to use that as a number, because that would be double the cut that you've already somehow managed to take, what is the impact on your ability to fulfill your public health and public safety obligations?
It would be devastating.
Why?
Because we would not be able to have the people and the programs in place like border protection, like being able to do early detection and then rapid response. It would be especially devastating. As fast as pests can spread, it's even more frightening to think about the possibility of foot and mouth disease. It is a disease that moves very, very rapidly and goes throughout an animal population very, very rapidly. We are so vulnerable in this state because of travel around the world, because of the number of tourists that are still coming here, even with our economy being down the way that it is. With just the exchange of goods around the world, we are so vulnerable to the introduction of a disease or an insect. It would be very, very devastating to do that without finding alternative revenue sources. And the alternative revenue sources, quite frankly, would have to be industry or federal government. And the federal government's going through exactly the same thing that we are.
In your professional opinion, having worked in this industry for your adult professional life, what is the likelihood of such an outbreak without any general fund support for these public health and public safety functions?
I'm thinking in the last year of just the number of new invasive species in the last couple of years. Right now we have a whole variety. We've had introductions of the citrus psyllid, which is devastating. We have red palm weevil, which will wipe out the palm trees in the state and the dates that go with it. That's more of an urban type of thing because the palms are used in landscaping, but it would have a huge impact to the nursery industry. We usually have anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen new pest finds of an invasive species that hasn't been found before. With regard to disease, that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it has tremendous impact. The last time we had Newcastle disease, it was approximately 12 years ago. We have a very robust system of inspections and diagnostics that happen on a daily basis to make sure that if there's something being introduced, we can find it. But much of that would be a bare backbone of a program.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nomination.
Mr. Chair, members, Jack Gualco with the Gualco Group. We have a memo in front of you which outlines all the clients from agriculture, business, and local government that are in full support of Secretary Ross's confirmation. And as one who had the chance to work with her closely for over 13 years, you could tell from her clear responses to your questions today, her policy acumen is unchallenged. And she's got an incredible depth of knowledge. She enjoys working with people and doesn't accept the status quo as being the way we ought to proceed, yet honors tradition. And when we polled inside our office to say what kind of adjective can we quickly sum up Karen Ross, it was firecracker. And I think California could do no better with Karen Ross as Secretary of Food and Ag, and we highly commend her to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gualco. Next, we're going to ask the witnesses, if you can be relatively brief, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. You were brief, by the way, Mr. Gualco.
That's a tough act to follow.
For the record.
Hi, my name is Michael Dimmick. I am the president of Roots of Change. Roots of Change is a statewide nonprofit. Our mission is to ensure the future prosperity of the state by bringing a diverse range of people together to work on the issues of sustainable agriculture, healthy food systems. And I'm here today actually to offer unequivocal and enthusiastic support from Roots of Change and the 45,000 people that are part of our network in the state for the confirmation of Karen Ross as Secretary of the Department of Food and Agriculture. She is the consensus choice for this important position in the eyes of those who are working for sustainable food and agricultural system in the state. Ms. Ross has the experience, relationships, broad perspective, and knowledge required to successfully serve the state of California. As you know and was mentioned, she recently served as Secretary Tom Vilsack's Chief of Staff at USDA, so she's linked directly to CDFA's primary partner and ally within the federal government and the Obama administration. Given the state's fiscal crisis, and a strong alliance with Washington, D.C. is essential, and she is positioned to maintain that important bond. I'm trying to go quick. You have a written statement from me. I'll say one last thing.
Go ahead.
On December 16, 2010, CDFA and the State Board of Food and Agriculture released a document called the California Ag Vision, which is really the result of several years, 3 years of consensus building among a broad spectrum of interests in the state of California. And that process was actually begun by Secretary Ross back in 2008, probably. And then Governor-elect Jerry Brown came to the meeting when that was actually released. And it was an important message to all of us there that the fact that the agricultural community, the environmental community, social justice, farm labor, health advocates who had worked so long to come to consensus would get the attention of this new administration.
Okay.
And Secretary Ross has said that Ag Vision will be the basis of her administration, so we're grateful.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman and members, Dave Puglia with Western Growers Association, representing the fresh produce industry. Everything that's been said, I would agree with. Karen Ross is an outstanding choice for this position. I just want to draw an underline on one issue, and then I'll leave the table. The exchange that Secretary Ross had with Senator Harman relative to regulation and her ability to cross over to the other secretaries in the governor's administration is extremely important, and I know she's made a commitment to do that. And we'll help encourage her along, too. Although, as you've heard, she doesn't need a lot of encouragement. Firecracker is the right word. We strongly support her confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puglia.
Bernie Michael, I'm from New York, but my wife is a Cornhusker, and she happens to be in Lincoln today, and she's a very close friend of Karen's and has worked with her over the years. So I'm here to support Karen as a friend of my wife, Victoria Horton.
Very good. Thank you.
Cornhusker.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman and members, Mike Salasco with Wine Institute. We are also here today to support Karen Ross. She's exemplary. You will find no better public servant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Velasco.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Evening.
Committee. Justin Oldfield, California Cattlemen's Association, representing California's ranchers, cattle feeders, beef producers. We're very strongly in support of your confirmation of Karen Ross.
Thank you very much for coming to testify. We appreciate it.
Hi. I thought you didn't do this kind of thing.
I usually don't, but I made an exception for you.
Name, rank, and serial number.
Rich Mateus, California Farm Bureau. I think Rich Mateus, Rich. All the adjectives have been used, but Karen is a person of knowledge, experience, and integrity, and so we highly support her confirmation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mateus.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tim Johnson, President and CEO of the California Rice Commission, and we represent all the state's rice farmers as well as our mills, and we have great pleasure to thoroughly and completely support Karen Ross as Secretary, so thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for coming.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Paul Cronenberg on behalf of Family Winemakers of California. We've worked with Karen for 10 to 12 years, particularly on Pierce's disease and glassy wing sharpshooter, which came up during her testimony today. I think our word would be tenaciousness, and you will find her here a lot. We support her confirmation.
Very good. Thank you. Next witness, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Emily Rooney I'm the president of Agricultural Council of California. I've had the pleasure of working with Secretary Ross for just under 10 years, and she's been a tremendous leader for our industry. She's challenged the way we've thought. She's provided opportunities and just done a tremendous job of teamwork and collaboration with our industry, specifically in regards to this budget process as well. She's been very transparent and just a pleasure to work with, and for that reason, Ag Council strongly supports her confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rooney. Welcome.
Rachel Caldor, Dairy Institute of California. We're pleased and proud to support the confirmation of Karen Ross, Secretary of Food and Agriculture.
Thank you very much for coming.
Emily Pappas, Lehman Levi, Pappas and Sadler. On behalf of both John Deere and Del Monte Foods, we are pleased to support the Secretary's confirmation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, members, Justin Malone on behalf of two groups, the Sustainable Groups, Community Alliance for Family Farmers and the Climate and Action Network, and also the Environmental Health Directors. And for disparate reasons, we look forward to working with the Secretary on food safety, but also sustainable food. We very much welcome you here.
Very glad. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Pablo Garza with the Nature Conservancy. We think we've had a great working relationship with Karen in the past. We think she's a great choice and wholeheartedly support her confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Claudia Reed, Policy Director for California Certified Organic Farmers. We represent about 1,900 certified operations just here in California. We wholeheartedly support the confirmation of Karen Ross to this position, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Dominic Damari with Damari Van Vleck and Brown, and actually I'm here as a private citizen because I am a former employee of Ms. Ross. She was my boss for 4 years, and I just want you to know that there are few people who work as hard as her, and I know very few people who are as ethical and as honest as Ms. Ross is, and she would be will be, and is going to be a fine secretary for the state of California. So
that's great.
I support her.
Glad you came. That personal testimony means a lot.
I'm Bob Atkins. I'm the president of the Agricultural Commissioner and Sealers Association. We are the partners of CDFA at the local delivery level for the programs that the Secretary oversees in the areas of pest prevention and in weights and measures regulations. And we wholeheartedly support the confirmation of Secretary Ross.
Thank you. Now I want to welcome Assemblymember Luis Alejos here. Welcome to you, sir, to the Rules Committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown, and if you'll indulge me while I read a short list of clients that would like to be on the record supporting Secretary Ross in her position. California Grape and Tree Fruit League, California Citrus Mutual, the California Cotton Ginners and Growers Associations, Western Agricultural Processors Association, Western Pistachio Association, California Tomato Growers Association, Western Plant Health Association, the Alliance of Western Milk Producers, and the California Association of Nurseries and Garden Centers. Thank you.
You're doing well.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Louis. Appreciate it.
I'm Michael Harris with the Black Farmers and Ag Association at the national level here in California, and a whole host of diversity advocates for agriculture that have been engaged with the USDA 8 years now. And thankfully, Karen was in Washington, D.C., leading the effort for cultural transformation with the entire USDA. And it is thankful that she's back, well, I'll say home, and will help me to retire on a great vineyard that we talked about. But it's a blessing to be here and to have Karen back here and to really think about, as we look at the room, agriculture is the #1 industry. This room does not look like the state of California. And I would think in the next couple of years, this room, at the policy level as well as the ownership level, will look like the state of California will solve more problems.
Thank you. At some point, probably not this hearing, it would be interesting to hear your perspective on the national incident that occurred with the USDA last year in, I forget the woman's name, Shirley Sherrod, and what lessons you took from that at some point.
I really I want to take a moment of personal privilege. Rich Rominger has been a mentor for me. He's one of the first people I met. He's been a great Secretary of Agriculture here in California, and he was a great Deputy Secretary at USDA, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Welcome. You always keep the title.
I just want to say that I think Karen is the right person for the job at this time. And I think the committee's asked some good questions that point out the importance of the Department of Food and Agriculture here in protecting the food supply of the state. And I think more and more in this day and age, that is a matter of national security. So it is an important department, and Karen's the one who can make things work in these difficult budget times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Gary Conover representing Western United Dairymen. The budget at CDFAs is very large. The dairy industry is the largest single item to be operated by the Secretary and her staff. However, I'm proud to say that we fee assess ourselves, again, to pay for our marketing activities in our milk pooling and pricing program. California produces about 25% of the farm gate milk in the United States, something many people don't know. We are by far the largest farm gate valued commodity in California, as we are domestically. We are in very strong support of Ms. Ross's nomination as well as confirmation. I have walked the halls with her working on dairy issues, and she has a great grasp of what we do, the challenges we have in the dairy industry, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conover. Appreciate it. Are there any witnesses in opposition to the nominee? If not, I would take a motion. I thought it was a terrific hearing and very thorough questioning and important public testimony from a wide range of stakeholders. You're obviously the right person for the job. I will say, and I'm not shy to say it, I hope that we can provide you with the modicum of general fund resources so that you can do your job, especially in the public health and public safety arena. It's very much in doubt now, as you know, but we hope that we can. All right, moved by Senator De Leon. Please call the roll on the nomination.
Senators Alquist. Alquist, aye. De Leon. De Leon, aye. Fuller. Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon. Harmon, aye. Steinberg.
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That's 5-0. Congratulations. Go to the floor. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. We'll bring your nomination to the floor very soon, and I'm sure it will be successful. All right, we've got a couple other items here. We've got item 1, reference of bills. Are there any issues? Okay, moved by Senator Harmon. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist. Alquist, aye. De Leon. De Leon, aye. Fuller. Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon. Harmon, aye. Steinberg.
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That passes 5-0. File item 2, which is a subject matter that the Vice Chair and I and Mr. Schmidt have talked about. I don't know, Mr. Schmidt, if you want to give a very brief overview. Senator Harmon, if you want to. Go ahead.
This is an amendment to the Senate rules, standing rules, and it's more specific as to the creation of select committees, which are subcommittees of the General Research Committee. The General Research Committee is the Senate's sitting out of session as a research body. What we provide particularly in here is that each senator requesting a select committee has to provide a description of the topic, a timetable, a work plan, anticipated work product, potential staffing needs, and other anticipated resource demands. A statement by the senator proposing a committee that he or she has discussed these plans with the chair of the standing committee having jurisdiction, and the statement shall describe any objections that the chair has to the establishment of a select committee. The select committee must be established by resolution adopted by the Rules Committee that specifies jurisdiction. That's kind of current rule, but we're more explicit here, I think. In making this decision, committee shall consider any objections to that action raised by the chair of a standing committee. A select committee may only act with regard to the particular study or investigation assigned to it by the Committee on Rules, and a select committee automatically terminates, which is true now, but its performance or lack thereof should be a factor to be considered in any request to reestablish it. So it creates a little bit more formal process whereby we would assess requests for the creation of select committees.
Senator Harman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to publicly thank you, Senator Steinberg, and Secretary of the Senate for working with myself, and I'd particularly like to thank the staff members that helped to...
Kathy Dressler, the Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Kathy. This is really a form of a reform, and I think it's something that we as senators, particularly members of the Rules Committee, need to do, and I'm very, very supportive of it. I think it will help us when we are looking at select committees, whether they're really doing the job or not doing the job. And we have had some situations in the past where members maybe haven't done as much as they could do. So this will be a very major step in the right direction, and as far as our establishment and maintaining of select committees, I'm very much in favor of it and would move approval.
Thank you very much. Moved by Senator Harman. Please call the roll if there are no comments.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harman? Aye. Harman, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Thank you for raising the issue as well. Now we have file items 4 through 36, of which the majority are actually the actual appointment of select committees.
31, please, Mr. Chair, 4 through 31 of the select committees.
4 through 31. As I understand it, that you want to. What do you want to do here?
Thank you very much. On items 4 through 31, I would be in support of some of those items. Some I'm opposed. If you'd like, I'd read into the record the ones I'm supportive of. And
well, which are greater, the ones you support or the ones you oppose?
It's 15-13, so it's about the same.
It's about tied. Okay. Well, it's fine. I just for purposes of easy administration here, we can take one. Let's take the 15 you're in support of first as a motion. And then we can take the 13 separately, and we can cast our votes.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move approval of items 4, 7, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 20, 21, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. That should be 15.
Very good. Okay, so there's a motion to approve those select committees. Let's call the roll, please.
Senators Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. DeLeon? Aye. DeLeon, aye. Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harman? Aye. Harman, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Very good. So then that leaves the remainder where I would anticipate a different votes. So let's just enumerate the numbers here.
I can do that for you.
Okay, that's fine.
Be easier.
Right.
These would be items 5, 6, 8, 9, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22, 24, 30, and 31.
Okay, and some membership changes on some of the ones you... Let's take those separately. How's that? Let's take that separately. So let's now, a motion on to approve 5, 6, 8, 9, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22, 24, 30, and 31. The chair supports. Please call the roll. We'll have that be moved by Senator Alquist, if that's okay. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Aye. Alquist, aye. DeLeon? DeLeon, aye. Fuller? No. Fuller, no. Harman? No. Harman, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
All right, so that's a 3-2 vote. Those are approved. And now we have some requests here, specific Senator Harman's requests on changing some committee membership. Why don't you go through that?
Yes,
Senator
if you would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On item 21, would request to remove Senator Blakesley. On 20, and these are all made with the request of the senator involved. Item 24, remove Senator Fuller from that committee. Item 27, remove myself, Senator Harmon. And item 28, to remove Senator Harmon. Those four.
Very good. I have no objection. So that'll be moved by Senator Harmon.
Thank you.
How about we substitute? Is that a tradition here where we can substitute the unanimous roll call?
That's fine.
Save Jane's voice. Okay. Okay. Yes. So that so that item then is approved 5-0. We then have a couple remaining items beyond the select committees, which is items 32 through 36. Any objections to any of these measures?
We'd like to divide out and separate item 36.
I had a feeling that one was going to come off the list. Earth Hour. If you wanted to make it Earth Half Hour, we'd compromise. All right, so let's do. We're always willing to, make principled compromises. So this items 32 through 35. Please call the moved by Senator Alquist. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist, Alquist I, DeLeon, DeLeon I, Fuller, Fuller I, Harmon, Harmon I, Steinberg, Steinberg I.
Item 36, moved by Senator De Leon. Please call the roll on item 36.
Senators Alquist, Alquist I, DeLeon, DeLeon I, Fuller, Harmon, Steinberg, Steinberg I.
Earth Hour survives. That measure passes. Okay. Is there anything else to come before the committee? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.